some thought and something to do there, so thank you, that's all I got.
Do me a favor, quickly walk me through how you got to the FAR you're at now. So you started with a MU7, you started with whatever, and you got to 4.8. How'd you get beyond 4.8? That's my question.
So
4.8 is with the IZ.
I'll explain it.
Does everyone know what a FAR is?
We're
So-
going to have to explain that.
Do you want me to walk through, or do you want to?
Yeah, just make sure where to 4.8 to. Now explain, now you can explain FAR.
So generally speaking, the zoning regulations regulate density through a measure called floor area ratio, or FAR, and it's essentially a measure of density. The MU7 zone permits a 4.0 as a matter of right. Under the new 2016 zoning regulations, you then get
The floor area ratio, it's a fraction. It's a ratio of the square footage of a building to the square footage of the land,
right.
right?
Right, thank you. So 4.0 matter of right, if you're doing a residential building and you trigger the inclusionary zoning requirements, you get a 20% bonus. So that brings you from a 4.0 to a 4.8. Then, if you use the plan unit development process, you're eligible to get another 20% bonus. And that's what gets us from a 4.8 to a 5.76 or thereabouts. And I think we're slightly under that, but not by much. So that's how you get to the density that we're at under the regulations. If you goes,
In addition to the map amendment.
right, so
Where does the map amendment come in?
so that's part of the PUD as well. So the site is currently in the MU4 zone,
Which used to be, for those of us who
the old C2A zone. And we are rezoning to the MU7 zone, which is the old C3A zone. And
So the FAR, matter of right FAR for C2A is what?
it's a 2.0 as a matter, a 2.5 as a matter of right, a 3 with IZ, and I suppose if you did a PUD.
So 2.5 is a matter of right, and then,
Well, no, 3. We're going to go apples to apples. It would be 3,
Sorry, okay.
because that's what you could do as a matter of right if you're doing residential development. So the density we're getting through this PUD, if you look at the PUD and the map amendment combined, allows you to go from a 3 to a 5.76. And that's through the rezoning, IZ, and then
I have two thoughts. Maybe we don't need to, maybe throwing the entire kitchen sink at this with the zoning, maybe we need to kind of think harder about that. In my mind, I'm not sure, and I know that's gonna be not fun, but think about that. Because I feel like we're doing a lot of things, and I feel like maxing out that might not be exactly what we want, and I realize how that impacts everything. So think about that from my perspective, in terms of height and things like that. In terms of traffic, I do agree, I don't think there's a huge impact, but maybe, would you be interested in doing 2-way on Brandywine over here?
Doing what?
2-way on Brandywine, it's one way.
Oh, 2-way on Brandywine.
Taking away the parking and doing a 2-way on Brandywine.
I don't know, that's something to
I've always
think about.
I've always thought that was a much better idea than what it
Oh,
does
instead
now.
of parking, I see.
So there's parking on both sides and it's a one-way going that way. And I know Tom may or may not agree with that, but
It seems to me though, looking at options is a very
I
worthwhile
would-
thing, because it's a problem, right?
I would like to look at that.
that makes sense.
Okay, so anyway, but there's really the only two comments I have for now. I'll look at the CTR later and probably have more thoughts.
Tom, you go first.
Brooke, on the amenity package, there's been some criticism of the quality of the Cathedral Commons development. Can you talk about what it means to have high quality materials in the project? I mean, what does that constitute? How is that measured? How would we know that we're getting that? Can you talk a little bit about that, because you're listing that as an amenity?
Sure. We didn't invite our architects here tonight because we didn't know that there'd be a lot of detailed questions about the architecture. But you know, there are cheap buildings and buildings that you look at them and you can tell that they're cheap, and there are buildings that are nice. And a lot of developers will use less expensive, less attractive materials, particularly on the back side of a building, like hardy panel or hardy plank, or you know, these cementitious panels that are super cheap. You know, sometimes they'll put really nice, high quality brick and you know, metal on the front of the building, and then the back it'll sort of cheap it out, and they'll use vinyl windows instead of aluminum windows, and use, you know, hardy plank instead of brick, and you can sort of tell, oh, they saved money on this side, and they they went bigger on this side. In the PUD process, you can't cut corners like that. Every part of your building has to be designed and articulated and high quality. They wouldn't allow, a big blank brick wall, for example. So even on the alley side of our building, we've put in a lot of windows, and we're using different brick and metal colors. We have all of the materials specifically called out in our PUD application, so that's all subject to zoning commission review.
Yeah, articulation of the building design itself. I mean, ultimately, the zoning commission reviews the design in detail, and based in part on comments from the Office of Planning, will get into the weeds with us on, well, did you consider this? And they'll do part of it is it's essentially a design critique. They'll say, simplify the materials or increase the quality, make this change here. So I think it's through the PUD process. In some ways, it's an iterative process. As they look at the building, they consider the various sides of it. What could you do on this side or that side to improve the quality? And ultimately, the guarantee is that you're bound by the approved plans, and that includes the materials, the colors, et cetera, that are selected. So if you show a building that has, significant articulation and detail and depth and so on, you're bound to do that. I don't know if that answers the question. I'm guessing from your face it doesn't.
Well, I just don't understand what a high or low quality building material is. I guess, when I see it? All right. One thing we did with, is it possible, Lenny, one thing we did with the Babes project was a retail agreement. Are you still, I know we've broached that before. It's sort of a low-cost thing. I don't think it doesn't cost anything necessarily. But are you,
With which building?
with Babes, we did the
Okay.
retail agreement. Are you willing to consider doing something? Have you reviewed the retail agreement we have with Douglas Development?
It's been a while. I think I have a general idea of what it was, but we have to go back and look at
Basically,
it.
it excludes certain
Chains,
uses
right.
and, chains. I mean, there's a bunch of uses starting from uses I assume you're not gonna do, like a pawn shop. And then,
Or a pawn shop.
Or a pawn shop, which is also there.
Or a mattress store.
Or a mattress store, also there, and then we get up to stuff like drugstores, because that's not high value. Banks, because
Okay.
that we've got lots of banks, and I don't hear anybody saying we need more banks. Chain stores, and we might have other ideas, but the point is it's excluding things, not telling you what you can put in, but we come to an agreement about
Okay.
things.
We can do
Uses
that.
the neighborhood is not that interested.
And my guess is that our interests will be aligned with the neighborhood and the types of retailers that they want and we want. In other words, yes.
Do you guys hold your properties, or do you develop them and flip them?
We like to hold on to them as long as possible.
And this came up in passing, but I would really urge you guys to look at those utilities, with the small size of those lots on the corner. If you guys don't underground those utilities, we're gonna have those 2 or 3 remaining poles in that corner forever. And it's an atrociously unattractive corner already. So if you guys can look at, we actually met with an underground utility engineer a few years ago. Your design cost isn't gonna go up with going the extra 40 or 50 feet, so it may not be that much more. So if you guys can look into that, I think we'd really like to see a stretch on that and figure out if we can get to the corner. 'Cause if you don't, it's never gonna happen, I'm afraid. And also on this, on the public space amenity, I'm just not sure how that's, I'm really having a hard time getting my head around that.
Which one?
Your public space on the, I guess that's currently the Murasaki space, the patio. This is kind of an aspirational throwaway thing when I first ran for ANC years ago, but I actually put in all my literature that I wanted to bring a beer garden to the neighborhood. I think actually, and you've already got a alcohol retailer in the building. I think people will be happy to see you stay there. I think the best bet is just to make that a great retail space that's publicly accessible, attached to retail, so it's programmed. You don't have to figure out who's going to use it, how it's going to be programmed and controlled. But make it a great space that connects to the street. That's kind of my suggestion, and I'm still only speaking for myself, but I even worry a little about the rooftop thing, but I'm particularly about the street thing, that we leave it as some open-ended thing and it ends up not being an activated space. I think we're actually better off attaching that to retail and just figuring out some ways it's a really well-designed space and get a good retailer in there to activate that stretch of the street. That's kind of my suggestion on that. And then on the traffic study, 2 quick questions on the traffic study. Did you get any sense from DDOT yet about any suggestions from them on traffic mitigation? Have you gotten to that point with them? That's, I think, one of the things we're going to be interested in. I know there's going to be a reduction, in theory, a reduction in car trips, and that's believable to me, but we do still have some impacts on intersections with poor levels of service and potentially concerns about pedestrian safety in some of the adjacent intersections. Have you had any indication or you got on potential mitigation requests?
So we have not, and it sounds like there are some existing issues that you guys would like to see resolved in some way, and we can help facilitate those
Right.
conversations.
I mean, this may be mitigation or it may be an amenity, but there are existing things that we'll want to talk to.
Okay, and that's
But-
actually, that's a segue to the last thing on my list, which is, there's this thing up in the air with GDS. GDS's traffic mitigation plan included a traffic light at Chesapeake in Wisconsin, which would actually, I don't quite understand, I have to contemplate it later. Commissioner McHugh suggested about making Brandywine a two-way. One of the problems I see with this site is how are trucks going to get back out to go southbound on Wisconsin? I think a lot of the trucks actually try to make their deliveries as they enter the city and lessen their load as they head southbound. So I think it's a question of did you assume a light at Chesapeake in Wisconsin? I mean, I think GDS is putting a light there, but with their plans changing, there may not be any more.
Right.
So what did you assume as far as Chesapeake
So
in Wisconsin?
we assumed Chesapeake and Wisconsin would not be signalized, and again, that's because we're kind of in this strange limbo with GDS. But I will say, when they do their traffic study, they would need to include us as a pipeline, assuming we get approval. So you will
Whoever gets
get.
approval first ends up burdening it.
Right, so that's how that process would work. So we didn't include it in this study because essentially we can't until we know the signal is going there. I just can't model it that way. But in the future, when they continue and move forward with their study, you would eventually get that answer, is what I'm telling you.
Right, but that's the last bit I have, which is, how do you anticipate trucks getting out of the site then? If you don't have a traffic signal in Chesapeake and Brandywine's a one-way, how do you anticipate trucks exiting the site to get either northbound or southbound out of the site?
Well, I think it's still, you could still very easily, well, not very easily, it's Wisconsin Avenue, but you can still come out and make the right turn to head southbound if you want to go that way. And I would see a lot of truck traffic potentially taking that route. I'd have to check DDOT's preferred truck routing map to see what routes they would take to come down this way. But I would foresee the majority of retail truck traffic coming out.
We'll look
That
at that.
doesn't give you a northbound outlet.
We'll look at it when we look at the loading management piece of this. We'll look at that as a part
We'll
of
look
it
more
and
closely at
provide
the
more
truck
detail,
routing, yeah.
rather than trying to.
I mean, if GDS puts the light there, you've got a northbound out, but if they don't, that's a very difficult turn to make.
We'll look at it.
It's almost impossible, actually, in a truck, it's really gonna be hard to do.
Okay, noted.
All right, that's it for me, thank you guys for coming tonight.
I just want to add, just maybe think of one thing. We're not expecting the 55-foot tractor trailer trucks here. And zoning doesn't require that we provide loading facilities for that. We have a 30-foot loading berth, and the type of people that move into this building aren't coming with a house full of furniture.
Well, what about the commercial?
In the retail.
They'll be restricted to a 30-foot truck,
30
because
foot.
that's the size of our loading dock.
Okay, in other words, space, okay, and that's something we can put into a loading management plan.
Yes.
Right.
But a 30-foot truck is still bound by the existing truck route restrictions, right?
I was just thinking about sort of turning radiuses and how easy or difficult it is to turn from Chesapeake onto Wisconsin. It would be more difficult with a 55-foot tractor trailer than it will with the types of trucks that are likely to be coming to this project.
I mean, what do the
Yeah,
trucks
but-
that go there today do?
Yeah, but I would say that the trucks, I mean, there's a lot of traffic on Wisconsin Avenue. So if you're coming out and you're trying to go northbound, it really is an issue. So I totally agree with Tom
We'll
about
look at it.
Yeah,
you know,
we can look more closely
the
at
traffic
that.
light and the issue about trucks exiting the site.
And then we can also look at what they do now currently and
I can tell what they do now, they park illegally in front of
In
the
front.
Irish bar, whatever the name.
Kitty
That's what they do now,
O'Shea's. Yeah,
during
see,
rush
yeah.
hour, they just park their truck in front of Kitty O'Shea's and unload. And if you have a lousy plan, that's what they're gonna do, even if they're supposed to use the loading dock. Or lack of it, anyway, I'm done, sorry.
Okay, I actually agree with a lot of the things Tom and my other colleagues have said. About the patio, I always had concerns about that patio because I think it's a great space. It could be a great space, but it is it's gonna be kind of dark because of the building beside it, there's two, so it's between two buildings, and I just think that's a real challenge as far as its usability. But cool idea. As far as the, I never really thought the rooftop, with due respect to John Bender's idea about the rooftop garden, it just, I think there's a lot of issues about accessibility and when is it available and who can use it and for what purposes, that it just might get lost in the shuffle. But I also wanted to pick up on several, the comments that several people made about, it's not that this building itself is likely to generate a lot of additional traffic, but there are several dangerous intersections, bad spots for both vehicular and pedestrian and bike safety right around there. And we have been working on these a lot over the last couple of years, and with some success, but it's really worth taking a look at the impacts for safety around that whole site, as well as the incremental traffic related to the GBS project. Now, of course, we don't know, nobody knows when or if that's going to be back on track, but the traffic management plan that was originally presented was something that we did have trouble with, because that project will involve a lot of incremental traffic. So, at one level, it's not your problem, but it is a neighborhood issue. So I'm not
It's
sure.
not our problem, but it's your problem.
But it's our problem, and I'm not
It's
sure
our
how.
problem, it's our problem.
That's
right.
I'm not sure how to address it at this point, because nobody knows the timings.
Right.
Or even if GDS might come up with a new traffic management plan or whatever, but.
One thing that might be helpful is if you all could identify, I mean, so we've heard about Brandywine, but other issues in the areas in the surrounding circulation that we might want to look at where there are existing issues, that would be helpful.
We will
Believe me, we
identify.
can do that, because we, okay. That's
Is
all.
that it? Okay. So, and I'm just asking this, I don't have a per se problem with the height, but how much higher are you than Babe's roof? 10 with you?
We can pull up a diagram, if that helps.
Only I'm wondering what it would take to match that, whether that, kill a whole floor, or you could, I mean, there's some way around it.
So our roof right here is 85 feet from the sidewalk.
Okay.
And the top of their elevator overrun is a little more than 85 feet from the sidewalk. So we use this as a reference point for aligning our roof.
Okay.
Our building does have higher structures on top of the roof.
But they're set back too.
They're set back.
Well, I mean, I would say that the mechanical penthouse that you have is just on part of their roof. Comparable to their building, it's a 6-story
All right,
building.
okay, so but let me, just because it's our turn now, and we.
Okay, I'm just, but you,
No, I hear you,
the
I hear.
reference point is important.
I'm getting that, so, what's the difference, all right, just for clarification, since people have raised it, how big is the rooftop tower? In other words, above Babe's actual.
So their building to their height top of their roof is 76.5 feet, and we're at 85 from measured from roughly the same place. So
Is there any way you
about
could
9
keep
feet
the
tall.
same amount of stories with the same amount of density and somehow get down to that? You would have to, is there?
I mean, well, one, we're stuck with the existing structure, and it's floor to floor height, so we've got.
So you can't change the floor heights?
9 feet, it's hard to make up 9 feet in a building. I mean, if this were a 20-story building, you could do that, but not a whole building of this height. We lose the floor to match that height.
I mean, from in terms of just the optics, obviously, I think that if you match that, even though it's gonna be a much bigger building because of the grade, that would, I don't know if it would sit well with the people in this room who are concerned, but there's something to be said for that. But anyway, assuming that this is what you're gonna build, I think, and I've said this before, and it's a big ask, right? It's about as much as you could ask for, and now, it's in a medium density zone, medium is it, and the other, GDS was in moderate, so that if you're gonna do this big ask, this would be the place. We don't have that much medium density zoning in this area, so this would be one of those places. And with that said, I guess something I said before, and I know you're not gonna like it, but I feel like we've got a nice start on amenities. We could probably, I think, more are indicated, and we've been talking about some of the things that kind of shade into mitigation. I think all of us would be interested in some traffic calming in the area, some of which could be beneficial to you. The Rock Creek West livability study from a few years back had recommendations for traffic calming all over the neighborhood. DDOT's funded virtually none of it. We got AU to fund some stuff on 42nd Street.
Can you elaborate, John, on what those things would be?
Excuse me?
Can you elaborate on what those things would be?
I can if you'd let me get to my next sentence. But among the things of particular interest that might be of interest to you is I get lots of calls, and I have for years, from Janny parents who say, my kid almost got hit on 42nd Street and Brandywine because cars come, they just don't respect the stop sign there, and they go through to get to River. There is a recommendation in Rock Creek West to, and you can at least visualize this, there's like a triangular patio, it's not quite a park because it's covered, and then there's the part of Brandywine that goes through. The recommendation is to fill that up, and then people who could not speed to River, they'd have to come up and make a left. I could see where that, would be the kind of, assuming that the ANC we supported it previously, assuming we as an ANC continue to support it. That could be a nice amenity, traffic calming amenity. It also, though, because you guys own the property adjoining it, I can't see how it would not make that property at least somewhat more valuable to have what you could turn into a park right in front of that, rather than having a freeway. So
That's right.
So as an additional idea, something that I don't know what it would cost, probably not that expensive, but it would also have some benefit to you. I'd be interested in that. I agree with Tom, and I think Ann, it would be nice to see you guys underground the utilities all the way to the end of the street. I think that would make a big difference. And I suspect, because we got a little bit of an education and undergrounding with the Babes process, that, in for a dime, in for a dollar. Once you're digging and undergrounding, the delta is not that big to go a little further down. The incremental cost is not that big, so I think that would be interesting. I again agree with, I don't know, maybe it was everybody, but certainly these two, my colleagues on the left here, about the park-like, or it's not a park, but I'm going to call it the cave, the little bit of public space that you have that's an indentation there. That I think it would be much better for you guys to hook that up to some nice retail, a restaurant or a bar, where it will be activated, and also you'll be paid rent, and then we can put that money towards some other uses. I think it's got to be basically better for everybody because it'll be activated, and again, you'll be collecting the rent. So, and then in terms of your just sort of switching over to traffic management, there's some things you guys didn't mention which I've seen in other plans. I just wanted to ask you about, for instance, like zip car spaces or spaces for car sharing. Is that something you're proposing or could do?
There are existing zip car spaces outside if you want.
No, but I mean in your building.
In our building we can, and that actually earns us lead points as well, so it helps for our scorecard.
So that's something to think about.
Yeah.
Trying to encourage, the easier you make it, the more likely people are to do that.
Yeah.
I will say, we would have to check with the zip car and see if that's an area they'd be interested. It's also based on their market and if they want to have one there. And then I also know in the past we've had issues with making sure there's public access. So sometimes if there are gates to the garage.
Well, there's going to be a commercial part, right? So,
right. So.
We'll look at it.
But yeah, we'll look
Something
at it. Just some
Talk to Zip
potential.
Car about that.
Something to look at. Other things that I've seen in other plans, a charging station for electric cars.
I actually had written that down before you even said it.
Good, so we're great minds. And, you know, because we've been looking at cars and we've been looking at hybrids, and there are more and more cars now that are just conventional cars, not like Teslas that you can plug in. So,
Ryan will ask for it anyway.
okay.
Any other points?
Incentives for using transit to include bike share. Either giving, I don't know, what the typical, I think the norm now is to at least give an introductory membership to all tenants in bike share. Is that something you guys can do as part of your?
Yes.
And I'm not sure what kind of incentives you could give to use transit. Obviously, with the commercial people, perhaps you could you could try to write something in, and this is something we could talk about, that leases would have to have, that people who lease it for commercial would have to have some kind of transit incentive for their employees.
Maybe.
I'm raising it, and Tom here is our expert on how to implement that stuff.
It's required, you have to provide smart benefits in DC if you have more than 20 employees.
So maybe on the smaller ones. Anyway, sort of things that make us happy. I mean, that's pretty much it. For now. I mean, we're gonna obviously see more of you. So we need. I think we'll all agree we need to work a little bit more on the
Benefits.
on the benefits. Oh, actually, one other thing I wanted to mention, something that we brought up before. You've got 50-50, the AMI for the housing at 50 and 80. I think at least Tom and I would prefer to see that as 60 for the whole thing if you can do it. That's the way the new regs are going to read.
Can you say those numbers again?
Sure. Instead of having affordable housing half of the 50% AMI,
And the other half
at 80, do the whole thing at 60. With the thought that people, no, all at 60.
No, you add what percentage of it?
Oh, well, the existing 8%. So, I mean, there are various ways you can get at this. They're required to do 8% at 80%, if you will, 80% AMI. So you would be doing instead 8% at 60% AMI. Okay, so I'd still like to see if you can do that. With that, you guys are going to be back, and I know there have been concerns raised about height. There have been also people who are in favor of the height, and you know, ultimately we'll be taking that into account when we vote. But tonight we're trying to focus on traffic and amenities, and you know, we'll talk more. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll see you back
Thanks,
here.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
We got business with you.
Yeah, well, you don't have to leave. We're gonna approve our minutes and stuff like that. Minutes?
Thank you. I think I need to walk some more.
I approve the minutes.